Hi guys, so today's video is going to be my September wrap-up. There are a couple of books that I have started this month that I have not yet finished at the time that I'm filming this. So those two books would be The Lies of Locke Lamora and The Hazelwood. I am still continuing also with my Cosmere reread and my Witcher reread. I know I'm very behind in doing book reviews for those, so those book reviews you'll start to see coming up very soon. Getting into books that I actually have something to say for, I'm going to start off by mentioning Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. When I went into this, I have heard so many people say that it's incredibly dense. There's so many characters, so many plot points. He throws you right in the middle of things. He doesn't hold your hand. You won't get any exposition. I've heard all of these things, and as a result, a lot of the books that I picked up this month were young adult books because I find those tend to not be quite as intense. And Gardens of the Moon has been a month-long buddy read that I've been doing with a lot of you. I'll have the Facebook group linked down below. Everybody's really good about mentioning if they're going to chat spoilers or not. So if you are just joining in and you are like, I would love to have other people to talk with, but I'm afraid I'll be spoiled or I'm behind, don't worry. Everybody is really good about that in the group. So you're always more than welcome to join whenever. Anyway, though, Gardens of the Moon, I'm not quite finished yet. The time I'm filming this, it is not quite the end of September. So I'm almost done with the book, and I definitely have a lot to say, which I feel like this is gonna be the longest book review in chat I've ever done. We'll see. I'll try to cut it down so it's not an hour long or something. It is a lot, and I agree that Steven Erikson doesn't hold your hand, but I feel like he doesn't even look at you. It's like he doesn't even acknowledge that you're there. It's just like, here's what's up, and you stumbled upon it and you're like, what's this? If you are new to fantasy, or if you're new to epic fantasy, I don't recommend starting with this one because of a lot of elements about the story. I definitely think Steven Erikson just kind of throws you into the book, and he doesn't have these long paragraphs explaining this is how the magic works, this is who this person is, and this is their past. And he doesn't really do that. He also doesn't spend a lot of time with characters reflecting on things and thinking about, how do I feel about this? He doesn't do pretty much any of that. Again, I will get so much more into this when I do my in-depth review and chat for it. Like I said, the rest of the books on my wrap-up are going to be young adult books. If you're like, young adult books suck, then nothing about any of the rest of this video is going to interest you. But I like both age categories. So the next book that I got around to would be Serpent and Dove. This is a new release, and I would say this is one that is equal parts romance and equal parts plot. And by romance, I don't mean smut. I just mean there is a romantic plot line. The premise for the story is that there is a girl who is born a witch in a world where witches are hunted, and she is hiding her magical abilities because she is trying to escape from somebody. You don't really know too much about that, but you kind of get hints and little bits and pieces as the story progresses. And through some really interesting circumstances, she ends up being kind of forced into marriage with a witch hunter who does not know that she's a witch. And so the romantic plot line of the story is kind of a will they, won't they, enemies to lovers, or maybe not. I don't know. That's kind of what the romance is. And then the plot is her trying to make sure that people don't find out that she's a witch, and also trying to hide from whoever she's been trying to hide from, and it's all mysterious, and you don't really know what's up with that. I definitely think that this story was extremely entertaining. I got it, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna pick this up, because apparently I just gave the giant middle finger to my TBR that I'd set aside. I basically read it in a night. So it was very addicting, and I definitely want to know what was gonna happen next. And it had me always kind of thinking, oh, well, are they going to get together or not? And, oh, is he going to find out she's a witch? And then is he going to burn her and kill her? Or, are they going to fall in love? It was definitely very entertaining. And it had some moments, though, despite being entertaining, I would also say it had some really good moments of the characters kind of seeing the worlds in which the other person grew up in, why they think the way they do, and how they could potentially help change one another for the better. So it definitely had some good moments like that. It had some good character development. I also would say this feels more like if we had a set new adult age range, I would say this definitely leans towards that, because there's some It's not that it's like, oh, kids can't handle this or something like that. It's just it has some more stuff in it that's a little bit darker or maybe a slightly bit more explicit, which you can kind of guess from the setup of the story. Again, it's not smut. It's not constant like, ooh, let me do stuff. I'm not going to try to act like, just scratch that. It's not smut, okay? That's what I was getting at right now. But anyway, it was very entertaining, and I think a lot of people will have a lot of fun with it. Quite different from that one, we have the book The Girl the Sea Gave Back. This is a story that is a companion book to Sky in the Deep, which I'd never read Sky in the Deep, but from everything I could tell, it was not required to read that one first because it just takes place in the same world, but it doesn't necessarily start, right after the end of the other one, and it follows the exact same cast of characters or anything like that. It is a Viking-esque story, so it feels very Viking-esque, and it was very atmospheric. The writing is beautiful. I must say, I really liked the writing because it definitely captured the feeling of the fjords and the cold and the kind of looming, oh, everybody's always wanting to go to battle feeling that you have in this story. I definitely think she captured that really well. And a weird downside to that is this story is told in first person and it switches back and forth between our two main characters. And weirdly, because the writing style was so atmospheric, I did feel like the first person narration, our two main characters didn't have the most distinctive voices because the voice in the narration was so centered around how things around them were. And I applaud the atmospheric writing style, but I just felt like then the characters didn't quite have as much individual voice. The premise for the story is that we have two main characters, Tova and Helvard. And Tova is a girl who has some interesting abilities to kind of sort of see into the future, but it's not one of those, I see exactly what's gonna happen. It's more of she gets a feeling of what's going to happen and it kind of hints at what's to come. And so this particular clan who has taken her in, despite the fact that she is not one of their people and they don't exactly trust her, in fact they kind of think she's going to bring bad luck to them, they end up using her anyway because of her abilities to sort of see into the future. So they use her selfishly, and this kind of pushes their clan to get involved with another clan that Helvard is from, and he is kind of next in line to be this clan's chieftain. So it was definitely a very, oh my gosh, when are their worlds going to collide sort of a story. And I did think that the action in the story was well done, although there's not a ton of it. I know a lot of times when you hear Vikings, you think it's going to be a lot of people smashing heads in and stuff and burying axes in people's bodies. I guess that's what I think of Vikings. That's probably not a very great representation of Vikings at all. Anyway, it was a story that didn't have a ton of action. When the action was there, I definitely really liked it. And again, the writing style, it was very good. But I was a little confused reading it because the further I was getting into this book, I was thinking, is this book one of a series? Because I thought it was a standalone. But it just felt like it was book one because when we were really getting into the thick of it and we were getting into some stuff that I was really, really enjoying, then the book was over and the way it ended kind of like it was a standalone, but it just felt like there was so much more to the story. So I feel like we just barely scratched the surface. I hope the writer ends up writing more in this series because I would love to read more about our two main characters. But as of right now, even though I enjoyed the writing style a lot and everything, and I thought the setup for the story was interesting, it just doesn't feel like we got all of the story. Next up, we have The Wicked Deep. This is a story about a super messed up morbid town of people that every year at the same time, some girls that were were drowned. I just assume people who are executed were hung, I guess. Drowning and being hung are the same thing. 3 girls a long time ago, they were drowned because people thought they were witches. And now at the same time every year, the town believes that these girls come back to take revenge and drown some of the men and boys of this town. And they don't just kind of think this. It literally happens every year to the point where it takes place in our own world. And I'm like, at some point people would be investigating this phenomenon. I mean, we have people that investigate the most random of things. There are people that are trying to storm Area 51. And if this were happening, I'm like, I feel like the world would make a way bigger deal of it because like clockwork, every year boys start drowning and every year you hear the girls singing. The day it starts, you hear the singing doesn't stop until 3 of the girls in the town are possessed by the drowned witches from a couple hundred years ago, and you don't know who's possessed, but you're pretty sure that's how they're doing it, and they lure the boys into the ocean to kill them. That's the setup of this story, and our main character, she's like, oh, I live in this town that's really creepy and messed up, and it's my home though, and so she's just, some teenage girl, and then weird, things are happening, and they're creepy and whatnot, and then a boy comes into town. She's like, oh no, I hope they don't kill him. He's not even a part of all of this. And I'm like, nobody's really now. It was a couple hundred years ago. Nobody was involved with what happened then. But anyway, she's kind of liking this boy and she doesn't want him to die, but then she's possibly getting more involved with things than she was expecting. And it was creepy in concept, but I wouldn't say it's scary. I was never frightened while reading it, and I'm a pretty big wimp. But the atmosphere of everything I really liked. And I did like that it was in our world sprinkled with some fantastical elements in it. You do get kind of a split timeline. You get the present day, and then you start to find out what really happened with the girls who'd been drowned. So I liked that element of it. And I liked the story overall. It was a standalone. And then we got to the last couple pages of the book. And I had thought the book was over. I read it. I'm like, oh, okay, that was a nice ending. And then we got to the last couple pages and I was like, what? Obviously, I can't go into details and elaborate on why the last few pages caused that reaction in me. But I do get more into it in the book review and chat that I did for those of you that are curious. And I looked into it a little bit to see other people's reactions. And it seems like that ending is definitely a big divider for a lot of people. I do definitely think that the author, I would really enjoy a lot of her books because I liked her writing a lot and I thought the story overall was really fun to read and it was interesting and entertaining, and as a book I had a good time reading it, but I definitely didn't fall in love with it because the ending, I technically lied a little bit ago. I didn't just read YA besides Gardens of the Moon. I also read some Vinland Saga, and this is a story that is about a boy who is the son of a former Viking, but this particular Viking abandoned his men to live a life of peace. And then his past kind of came back and some things happened. And now the boy, Thorfinn, is our main character. He is sort of the one taking on he's bearing the past his father left behind. And it's a revenge story, but it's more than just a revenge story because it's so, oh man, it gets into like life and love and philosophy and religion and different beliefs, and it shows you the complexity of human beings. It shows you the terrible atrocities of war, but it shows you how people just keep going through all of that, how that stuff can affect them, it can change them, it can turn them into a person they never wanted to be. It's so good. It's so good. Lastly, I read Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Finally got around to reading this, and I did end up very much enjoying it. I do think it's a story I can see a lot of people not really loving if they don't like the characters, but overall, I think she did a very, very good job at taking a lot of the things that people go through, and she didn't really feel the need to rush through the story in order to get the readers to care and turn the page to know what happens next. Instead, she kind of sat back, and there is a story, there is a plot, there's things happening, and there are definitely high stakes, but I think the strengths of the story are the time she spends with us getting to know the characters and getting to know the trauma that they have gone through and how they are trying to get past that. If you'd like more details on any of the books that I mentioned, I'll go ahead and link my reviews and chats for those in the description bar down below. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.